I'm going to go back through and define those really quick. Consciousness, being self-aware. Rationality, can process and formulate ideas and evaluate them. Intention, purpose is one's own. Causal power, able to perform a task. Freedom, volition, choice, will, self-determination. We talked a little bit about the electrical impulses and whether or not everything was just a cause and event kind of way. We talked about I'm sorry. We talked about having a pool table and at the end of a chain of events, seeing that a pool ball had dropped off, like going back, why did that pool ball drop off? Because this one hit it, and then that one hit it, and then this one hit it. Well, why did that one move? Well, it was struck by a stick. Why did the stick move? Well, it was balanced with one hand, and then another hand was moving it. Okay, what happened in the physiological process up here? Well, it looks like nerves fired and moved the muscles to move the hand to move the stick and hit all the balls. Like, well, what caused the muscles to move? Well, it was a neurological process. And we said, well, why can't that just be an infinite regress? Why can't that just be a cause and effect chain all the way back? We talked about two reasons why it can't be. And we went into the process. If I can think about a thought, if I can, I'm going to pause and go back through and make this as succinct as possible. The most succinct way I can do this is to say that if, in order for that to be true, you can't evaluate it to be true. And this is how I get there. If it is just a cause and effect, then there's no such thing as rationality, because something non-rational can't produce something rational. So if it is just cause and effect, then we remove our ability to make we remove the ability for anything that requires a mind, justice, fairness, but rationality, the being able to think and evaluate two different ideas. Because if we are just cause and effects, then there isn't any standard to which we're applying. Because if your sequence of cause and effects have brought you to this place, and my sequence of cause and effects have brought me to this diametrically opposed place, there's nothing independent of these two things to say it is right or this one's right. Rationality is removed if it's just cause and effect. There's no standard. There's nothing apart of, nothing separate or objective that says this one is accurate and this one is not accurate. And because we see things as having the potential to be evaluated as accurate and inaccurate, the ability to rationalize whether or not something is, we can say it's not valid to say that there's nothing beyond just cause and effect in our brains, our life, bringing it up to the point where we're playing with the pool table. The second thing is the argument of I'm going to say Voltaire again, and I can't remember. I think therefore I am, and I am just butchering the philosopher, so apologize. But hey, now you get the real me. You can remember how scatterbrained I am. But the idea that you can't have a brain and a mind without you can't have just a brain, you can't have just a mind. There has to be something in addition. There has to be some kind of I love this. In order to exist, there has to be something that can make that statement. And if you can question that statement, there has to be something questioning the statement. And you can keep going back. I think, therefore I exist. Well, do I think I exist or do I not think I exist? Well, then what's the thing thinking about that you exist? And that that demonstration of there being rationality even of existence, and gives us another argument for there being volition. We're not just cause and effect. That was really long-winded, but I hope it made some kind of sense. I'm going to pause again. And I'm back. In order to avoid the conclusion that there is something beyond just the physical, the naturalist or the atheist takes the position attributes of agency which humans seem to experience are actually an illusion. Emotions and choices are merely part of a cause and effect chain of events. They're stimulated by prior events, and we simply call those chemical reactions. The immediate problem for the position is that the concept of having a thought about a feeling or a feeling about a thought, being that either would be the result of an internal cause, thinking about a feeling or feeling about a thought, and then that continual regress. However, if one understands the attributes of agency to be real aspects of human existence, rather than illusions, then this first cause starts to look a lot like a person. Basically, it's to say the cause of the universe must be an agent because agency exists within the universe. The idea of a creator who communicates with us, who's relational, and who loves becomes possible because just as we see rationality, and just as we can argue that rational does not come from non-rational, matter itself doesn't contain rationality. There is something imbued in us that is evidenced by these two arguments and many others. But the two arguments that we talked about, I think, therefore I am, and the the other argument I just used, like the presence of rationality and the appealing to rationality, because we can see those things, we know that they're not aspects of matter itself. And so there has to be something that provides us with this rationality, justice, that we don't see in antelope, we don't see in rocks, we don't see in air, but is nonetheless present with people, all people. This means that these concepts of love, creativity, justice, and rationality, as along with volition and those, have to have come from something that is also that is given those dimensions to us as people. They can't come from the chair. They can't come from the rocks, the air, because those things don't produce rationality, love, creativity, fairness, justice. Those things do not have a material connection except through us as humans. Then we talked about some evidence for design, going back to our basic arguments of, like, what are the things that we're trying to prove here. Is the reason to think that God exists. We see that there's the universe, it has a beginning or no beginning. We think that it has a beginning. We think that the beginning was caused and that the cause was personal agent. So now what we need to do is figure out, we see some other implications that matter did not create rationality nor justice. And so are there other things that we can look to determine more about this personal agent? So we look at the evidence for design. We looked at the fragile nature of our Earth as it flies through the the cosmos. Gravity. We looked at all of these different cosmic constants that are available to us, and a few other planets in our solar system. And this is something I was talking even with my daughters. I was like, even if we found other aliens, um, in faraway galaxy, that doesn't reduce the um, the possibility of God. Like God gave us these things. I have no problem with God giving somebody else and revealing himself to another culture or alien or whatever else. I mean, God created the entire universe. But what we do have is we have evidence of design here on Earth, and we see incredibly complex systems inside of ourselves, like ourselves, and in the world around us. I mean, the nitrogen cycle, the oxygen cycle, the mass of a parent star. If its luminosity were to change too quickly, it would burn out too rapidly. If it was less, then the lack of UV radiation would be inadequate for plants to produce sugars and oxygen, which are necessary for us to survive. Like the design of the eye, that there's a lens that takes and focuses this band of light, which we call visible, the visible light spectrum, and focuses it on a set of nerves in the back of our head at the right distance, so that when it gets to that set of nerves, those nerves just happen to be connected to the right part of our brain in order to process that information. There's no direct correlation between photons and the neurons in our brain. There's no direct causal link that makes photons react with neurons, and yet there's this whole process by which we can process this information that's coming into our eye. I mean, that's pretty cool. That to me is evidence of complexity, and we talked a little bit about that. We talked about the probability of having this all happen by chance. We talked about in order for life to be sustained, it must traverse three levels of probability: a life-sustaining universe, a life-sustaining planet, and the evolution of advanced life. Even if the first two conditions are satisfied, then the only problem remains is that life forming and non-life attaining an order as high as man. What does that mean? It means that we want to look at the likelihood of proteins coming together in order to form the requisite building blocks for life. And we went through and we started talking about amino acids and protein molecules, and we talked about the possibility of it happening to be 1 in 10 to the 65th and 1 in 10 to the 40,000th. And those numbers, like those they don't come from, especially the one here, Carl Sagan, on my next page, are not, they're not Christians. They're not. I don't. All right, slide aside. There are a lot of, I think, even well-intentioned Christians who don't take into account how they sound when they start just spouting off these statistics. For somebody who has never considered the possibility of there not being an infinite past, then they quickly gobble up these potentials and these ratios, partly because they don't understand the immensity of them. But second reason is they say, well, look, if there's no past, then there's infinite time, and if there's infinite time, then there's infinite possibilities, and we just happen to be here. It's just gone on in infinite past. You also hear this a lot with multiverse people. Well, it's just one universe here, and Yeah, and that's why we brought it to this point first. Why we offer these evidences of design this far into the class and not earlier on, because they need to be put in context. I also think that the people, in an effort to be more, and I'm guilty of this too, an effort to be more convincing or compelling, they don't go through and evaluate what they're saying.